All right, here we go. Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's Drew Murphy here. I want to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. Those of you that are new, welcome to Clarity Coaching and Consulting's YouTube channel. Clarity Coaching and Consulting is my coaching firm. I am a certified personal development and self-worth coach. Basically, what I do is I help people find themselves, okay, work on their self-worth and build it up, you know what I mean, so they can go out there and tackle those goals and those dreams that they're going after, all right, in life. My philosophy is that you can have everything, all the bells and whistles. You can have all the money, all the, external things, the cars and all of the materialistic whatever. But if you don't feel 100% within yourself, like if you don't really love yourself and you don't really see your own personal self-worth, then something's going to be missing, right? So that's why what I do is I try to help, find that balance with my clients, all right? And every week I do a webinar based on a variety of different topics. Today we're going to talk about owning your flaws, all right? Owning it. But before we get started, something very important over here I need to grab. So give me 2 seconds. Yes, my coffee latte. Oh my God. Those of you that know me know I am a coffee person. I love my coffee. So today we're going to talk about owning your flaws. Now, at the end of the webinar, I'll give you all the information if you want to get in touch with me. You want to know, what are my coaching credentials. You want to know what type of programs I have to offer. You want to know if I can coach you, so on and so forth, and how to get in touch with me. I'll give you all that information at the end of the webinar, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to go ahead and jump right into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the different parts of what we're going to talk about so you can get an understanding and a briefing of what we're going through, and then we'll go ahead and get right into it. So go ahead and grab a pen and a pad, and let's go into it. So first thing we're going to talk about is the problem, okay? Why do people avoid their flaws? And I got my notes here on my computer. Hopefully the computer will do what it's supposed to for me. So number one is the problem, right? We'll talk about the problem, why people avoid. Then we'll talk about reframing flaws, okay? Flaws are not your identity, very important, okay? And then we'll talk about the growth process, the fact that it takes time, okay? And then we'll talk about the balance. And if we have time, I will give you some practical framework and some tools that you can use, to help you continue to manage this whole situation. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So most people, and I'm not talking about every single person, I'm saying most people, the majority of people fall into one of two traps. All right. They either fall into the trap of they ignore their flaws completely. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect. I can see the flaws in everybody else, and I'm quick to tell you what you should do and what would make it better for you, but I don't look at what's going on with me. Or when someone tells me about myself, I get an attitude, or I have, I'm quick to respond or whatever else, right? So that's the first trap that people fall into. The second trap that most people fall into is that they beat themselves up relentlessly and endlessly over their own flaws. They have such a low level of self-worth that they're constantly thinking about what's wrong with them instead of thinking about what's right with them, and they listen to what everybody else is saying, and they look at when they make a mistake, they just they make a little mistake as big as they possibly can, and there's the vicious cycle. So those are the two main I would say traps that us human beings fall into. Now, obviously, right, neither one of those is growth, right? Wow. Neither one of those is growth. We know that, right? What if you actually want to become a better version of yourself? You need a third path, and that is honest self-awareness without self-destruction. Honest self-awareness without self-destruction. So it's basically a combination of both, but the opposite. Does that make sense? So honestly admit that you have flaws, but don't beat yourself up over it so much, right? So we'll get into it. So let's talk about the problem. Why do people avoid their flaws? Why do we avoid our flaws? Why do we act like there's nothing wrong with us? Right? All of us do it at some point or another, right? Some of us, it's more of our personality than others. But we've all, fallen victim to that or fallen subject, to that whole thing. One of the things that I've noticed about myself, I can only speak from my personal experience, is ego protection. Okay? So there's three main ones, right? There's ego, fear, and conditioning. So we'll get into those three. Number one is ego protection. I'm afraid that if I admit I'm flawed, what does that say about me? So if I say, and like I said, this is my personal experience, with me working with myself and becoming a better version of myself, so that I can be the best coach that I'm trying to be, right? In order for me to do that, I got to work on myself. Can you dig it? Okay. So ego protection. Your ego is very, makes you feel like it's very important, right? Your ego wants to be the most important thing in the room, and if I admit that something's wrong with me, then what does that say about me as a person, as a whole, right? And then you fall into this trap, or I should say, I fell into this trap of, well, if I have these flaws, then, I'm not good enough, or I'm not, you know what I mean? You see where I'm going with the downward spiral? So that's the ego protection. Instead of admitting that I'm flawed, I'll say, you know what? Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'll make an excuse for it. I'll make it another reason why it's okay or whatever else, right? And that's to protect my ego. Number two is fear of judgment. Now you're worried about not just judgment from what other people are saying, because when you say judgment, normally you're usually thinking, judgment from others, which that is true. Most people have the fear of judgment from other people. What are they going to say on the internet? What are your family going to say? What is your family going to say? What are your friends going to say? Co-workers, whatever, right? But also the fear of judgment for yourself or from yourself, which I've learned to understand that is a lot more, it's a lot tougher. It's a lot more dangerous. The judgment that you put on yourself is way more harsh than the judgment that other people have put on you, right? So that's also a reason why we, avoid our flaws, is because we're afraid to judge we're afraid of the judgment, all right? And the third one is conditioning. Many people were criticized when they were growing up. So when you were little, you were coming up as a little kid, you were criticized, you were put down, bullied, made fun of, whatever you want to call it, and you weren't really encouraged a lot as a kid. So you've been conditioned to think that, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? You've been conditioned to think that, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, I'll never be whatever. And so you're constantly putting yourself down no matter what. Even when you make a win, even when you do something and you're successful or you achieve something, you always find a way to go, yeah, but, or I got this degree, but I got this job, but nothing ever seems to be good enough, right? Does that make sense? It's like, well, that's okay, but that's not good enough. You need to be here instead of here. So you're constantly, you're constantly pushing yourself, not in a positive way, but in a negative way, saying you're not good enough to be here. You only made it to here. You were supposed to get here. Does that make sense? And that comes from, like I said, the conditioning. Your brain is wired, because of your past experience and how you grew up and what people told you and so on and so forth. So those are the three main reasons I would say why, people avoid their flaws. So your brain is wired to protect your identity, right? So instead of saying I messed up, it says, well, here's why it's not really my fault. I messed up, but see, this is what happened. See, if you hadn't have done this, or you hadn't said that, or if they hadn't have did this to me, or if you're always projecting it from the outside, right? It's it's not because I'm weak, it's because I'm human, right? And you said it. So, you know what I mean? You're always trying to project the, the thing onto someone else. And we all know people, we all know people like that, right? We all know people that are pretty good at that. Some of them are very close to us. Some of them are our coworkers. Some of them are our parents, whatever, right? So, but here's the cost. If you can't see your flaws, if you always have an excuse for it, if you always have something else to say about it, or make a rationalization about it, then you can't grow past them. And if you can't grow past them, you will never get to be or never get to that level of self that you're trying to get to. If you are indeed trying to be a better version of yourself, if you are indeed really trying to work on your personal development and be, level up as a human, this is one of the main things that you have to do is look at your flaws and look at them from a positive and respectful, perspective instead of condemning and judgmental perspective. All right. So that's what we're going through today. So let's talk about how we do that. Let's reframe our flaws and understand that our flaws are not our identity. Okay. Now, this is something I've said before in other webinars. The things the negative things about you, the mistakes you've made, the setbacks you've had, the whatever negative thing you can think of, that is not your identity. You are not your mistakes. And I think those of us, especially those of us who have been conditioned to think that, from a young age that, we are never going to make it or we're this or that. That's one of the things that we constantly kind of battle with is that, we think that we're our mistakes. But you are not your mistakes. You are not your flaws. That is not your identity. Okay? A flaw is not a life sentence. It is a point. Okay? It is a point. So, for example, being defensive isn't who you are. It's a pattern. Okay? You can change that pattern, right? It's not, like I said, it's not your identity. It's a point. If you're defensive, or that's just the way I am. No, that's not just the way you are. It is a pattern that you've created and built up over time, based on whatever things in your life that have happened or, however you've seen yourself and seen life and whatever else, you've become defensive. But that is something that you can actually change, okay? It is not a personality. It's just a pattern. It's just something that you've done over and over and over again. Now, in order to change that pattern and in order to break that pattern, it takes time, right, to finish it or to fix it rather, or to manage it. And that is because it took time to build it. So obviously it's going to take time to dismantle it. Does that make sense? It's the same thing with another example would be procrastination. Procrastination isn't your identity. It's a behavior. It's the same thing. It's not, I'm just a procrastinator. That's just who I am. No. That is just a behavior. That is something that you do, okay, because you think that it's a part of you. No, it's just a behavior. It can also change. Now, this takes time. I really want people to understand that when I do these webinars and I tell people about, the different changes that they can make in their lives and the different things that they can do, the different tools and mechanisms that they can use, to help manage certain things, in their lives and become better versions of themselves. It's really, really important to me to make sure that you understand that this is a marathon, people. It is not a sprint. Okay, it takes time. Just like it took time for you to build up those negative traits or flaws about yourself, it's going to take time to break those things down. Now, it may not take as long, or it may take longer. It depends on the person and everything else like that. But you have to understand that it's going to take time. It doesn't happen tomorrow, right? And I know people, a lot of chefs, a lot of coaches, say, they give you these false promises, especially on the internet, on social media. If you follow this program in 7 days, you will be, or, if you do this or do that and buy my program in 3 months, you will be free of. That's all bullshit. I just want to let you to know that. That's all bullshit. It's not true. It will not take 3 months. It will not take, it's going to take time. Now, how long it's going to take, like I said, I can't tell you. That's up to you. That's up to you, who you are and the person and whatever else. But don't believe this whole, oh, it's going to go quick. And I know that we do that as people because nowadays, especially nowadays, we have this microwave mentality, right? Where we want everything to happen, quick, fast. We don't want it now. We want it right now, right? And no one has any patience. No one has any attention span. No one has any time. Everybody's in a hurry. We don't want to, think about it too deeply. Just give us the gist, right? But personal development takes time. Personal development is something that you really have to work at actively and constantly. And if you're going to do it right, you have to take your time and ingest it and digest it piece by piece, right? Does that make sense? So let's see, where are we? Procrastination isn't your identity, it is a behavior. Being defensive is not who you are, it is a pattern. When you separate who you are from what you do, you can create space to change. I'll say it again. When you separate who you are, okay, from what you do, like I said, a pattern or a behavior is what you do. That's not who you are. When you can separate that, now you've created a space where you can change. Now you've created a situation where you can understand the difference and you can really see it black and white and go, okay, now I see what's what. How do we do this? How do we change? How do we go? So let's talk about, okay, I'll give you a quick, well, you know what? I want you to do me a favor. Think about, I'll give you a little audience engagement. Think about one flaw that you've been avoiding, right? Think about one thing about yourself that you hate, that you know is not a good thing about yourself, and you don't have to write it into the comments. You can if you want to, but you don't have to write it in the comments. But think about it, right? And think about, the fact that you've been avoiding it and how long. Now, do you feel the difference between the fact that it's a behavior or a pattern versus it's who you are, right? When you really think about this thing that you've been struggling with or this thing that you've been avoiding, all right? So now, again, let's go to the growth process. Again, like I said, it takes time. Growth is gradual and it's not instant, okay? It's not, it's like when you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you're going to eat your food, you order your food. If you had a really good restaurant, a real restaurant, not a fast food joint, but a restaurant, it takes time for the food to come, right? You have to order it, you take your time, you have a drink, whatever, right? It takes time. I really want to stress that this is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? It's very important. And here's where people sabotage themselves. They expect instant transformation, but real growth works like this. So you have awareness, then you have discomfort, right? Then you have practice, then you have progress, right? And then you have what? Relapse, and then you have growth, right? So those are the awareness, discomfort, practice, progress, relapse, growth. The 6, would you say, steps of growth. It's the same thing. You can equate it to, someone who's trying to lose weight. Or you can equate it to someone who has a chemical dependency, an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever, right? The first thing you have to do, obviously, let's say that you have a person, because I used to work with chemical dependency patients back in the day when I was working in psychiatry. And we always told them, obviously everybody here has heard this a million times. The first step to being cured, or the first step to actually getting help or growth in this case, is admitting that you have the problem, right? That's the awareness part. Be aware of this thought that I told you to think about earlier. What is it, this trait about yourself that you've been avoiding that's negative? Be aware of it, all right? Okay, I know about it. I know that I have, um, I use myself as an example. I know I have a bad temper, right? Like this is something that I've been working on, throughout my life, and I've gotten a lot better now as I've gotten older. But when I started working on it, it was very difficult, right? So I said, okay, I know that I have a bad temper. That's the awareness part. Now comes the discomfort. I should work on it, but I don't want to, because working on it means I have to look at myself, and I don't want to look at myself because looking at myself is hard and it hurts. And why should I look at myself? And you start going through this whole why's it got to be me? Why can't they just do it the way, you know what I mean? You start tripping out. Okay, practice. Okay, now I've gotten out of the discomfort faction. Let me go ahead and try to practice this, working on my temper, for example. When something happens, instead of flipping out, I take a moment, you breathe, you count, you say, talk to yourself, whatever it is you got to do, right? That's your practice. Now, the more you practice, what happens? You get progress. Practice makes perfect, right? So now you see progress. Now things come up, you don't flip out as often, you know how to count, you can see things coming and you can avoid them. You don't really take it as serious as you used to, right? That's progress. Then comes what? Relapse, because you're human. All of a sudden, something happens and everything that you've practiced and everything that you've worked on, takes two steps back because you have a relapse. You flip out. Okay, that's okay. What does that mean? That's a stepping stone that is also another tool of growth, right? That's also a thing of, well, okay, that's going to help me grow. Having that relapse means, okay, I messed up. I'm conscious of the fact that I am not perfect and that I can mess up. That's what that message is, and that's what I had to learn. Now you start, that's what's going to help you grow. And you continue on and on and on. Now, like I said, marathon, not sprint. It's going to take time, and you may have 10 relapses. You may have 100. Who knows? But in order for you to get growth, to obtain that growth, you have to go through these 5 other steps. There is no shortcut, okay? You have to be aware. You have to go through the uncomfortable part of it. I've also done a video called Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. And I think I'll post a link up here on this one. Practice, progress, relapse, and then growth, okay? And it's not, oh, I realized it, so now I'm fixed, right? No. You might notice your flaw 100 times before you actually change it and actually do something about it on a consistent basis. But that's not failure, that's the process, okay? Now let's talk a little bit about balance. Accountability without self-attack. Now this one is very important because I know a lot of people, especially those of us who are conscious of, personal development and who are really trying to work on ourselves and become better versions of ourselves, so that we can go out there after those goals that we want in our life, so that we can be the people and show up, as the people we want to show up as for our people in our life, right? A lot of us suffer from that whole thing of the balance, the accountability without self-attack. A lot of us, we beat ourselves up too much, right? We are our own worst critic, and we're way too harsh on ourselves than we need to be, right? But there's got to be a balance, because you have to be accountable, okay? But not abuse. Being accountable to what you've done is not abuse. It's a big difference. You messed up. Okay, I messed up. I made a mistake. You don't beat abuse. You stupid. How could you, oh my God, what are you, dumb? Seriously? Like, you, again? That's abuse. You got to learn how to talk to yourself. And one analogy I use when I talk to my clients about learning how to talk to themselves or talk, positive to themselves. Put it like this. Talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend who's going through something, who really needs you, you know what I mean, and who needs you to be there for them. How would you talk to them, right? Or even better, how would you want your friend or your people in your life to talk to you when you're going through something, right? Would you accept them talking to you the way you talk to yourself? And most of the time, the answer to that question is no. I know, right? Most of the time, it's like, hell no, I wouldn't accept that, right? You would consider it to be disrespectful, rude, you know what I'm saying, foul, whatever, right? So that's what you do. You learn how to talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone else who's going through something. The way you would want people to talk to you, you got to talk to yourself like that, okay? So there's a difference between I need to work on this and what's wrong with me. Just like I said, I need to fix this situation, okay? I need to work on my blah, 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 laziness or, procrastination or fear or whatever. Instead of, man, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with you, dude? What are you, stupid? It's a big difference, okay? One creates growth and the other one creates shame. It's very simple, very, very simple. And shame doesn't fix behavior. What does it do? Shame does not fix behavior. What does it do? It reinforces it, right? It's just that simple. It's just that simple, okay? So instead of saying I'm terrible at this, say I'm learning how to handle it better and understand that it takes time to get to that space or get to that place where you want to get to, okay? So now we're going to talk about the practical framework, how to work on your flaws. So number one, obviously we identify it and, I'll do like this. Step one, identify one flaw. Not 10, not 15, not 5, not 3, 1. This is what I want you to do. And this is sort of, let's call it homework for the week. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to think about one flaw. Okay? Remember that one flaw I asked you about earlier that you are avoiding? I want you to take that flaw, identify it, okay? And then track it without judgment. Okay, just notice when it shows up. Don't be like, oh shit, I did it again. No. We're not judging. Again, no abuse. We're being accountable and we're noticing it. Okay, and then what do you do after that? Number 3, create a small correction. Okay, so for example, if you're defensive and that's a flaw that you're, quick to answer and quick to have, the answer for something. Pause before responding. That's one little thing you can do. Okay, that's a small correction. That's if you're defensive. If you're procrastinating, do 5 minutes, not perfection. So if you procrastinate, do it for 5 minutes. Don't try to be perfect at it. A lot of times people procrastinate because they feel like it has to be perfect. They have to, show up. The perfect product has to show up. And if you're working on that, then don't think about perfection. Just do the 5 minutes or the 10 minutes or whatever. Do the best you can and leave the perfection out of it. All right. So those are the 3 things I want you to work on when it comes to this dealing with your flaw. Okay. Identify it. Okay. Know when it shows up, and just one, not 100. Right. Track it without judgment. Just notice when it shows up and then make a small correction, whatever that correction may be. Okay? And then this is something that I want you to do at the end of the week. I want you to see, when did I improve? When did I fail? Okay? And what triggered it? Okay? So you can even start with number 1, or number 3 rather. What triggered this flaw to happen? What triggered my defensive attitude when someone says, I don't do this or I didn't do that, right? What triggered it? Now, what made me fall backwards and what made me improve? Okay, you just do that little homework thing for the week, and let me know how it works out at the end of the comments. So in the comments at the end of the week. So today's Sunday. So next Friday or Saturday, matter of fact, next Saturday, you can write that down for me, right? So listen, if you take nothing else from this, okay, this is what I want you to do. If you can't take nothing else from this webinar today, I want you to know that you can face your flaws without losing your self-worth. That's the message of this whole thing. You can face your flaws without losing your self-worth. You don't need to be perfect to grow. Very important. You don't need to be perfect to grow. You just need to be honest. You just need to be willing to do the work, okay? Take the responsibility and accountability, okay? And you need to learn to be patient. Very, very important. You need to learn how to be patient. The goal, okay, is to become aware, okay, intentional and better than you were yesterday. I'll say it again. The goal is to become aware, intentional, and better than you were yesterday. Please, again, I'll say it again. I'll keep saying it throughout all of my webinars. Take your time, okay? Don't try to be perfect all the time. Just do one thing you can do to be better today than you were yesterday. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. So, I want to thank you guys for your time. I hope you guys really enjoyed this webinar. Please do me a favor and what they call it, like, subscribe, and click, and all that kind of stuff. Go ahead and leave some comments at the bottom. Tell me what you think about the webinar. Tell me the one thing that you've been working on as far as a flaw that you're trying to build on. And yeah, just go ahead and leave the comments down at the bottom. And if you are interested and you want to know about my coaching, know how I do what I do, and you want to know if I can do it for you, then you can go to @DRU_Murphy on Instagram and go ahead and hit me up in the DMs and type coaching, or type in coaching, and then go ahead and write your message there and tell me what it is your question or whatever. And how that works is once we connect, we'll do like an hour conversation, 45-minute conversation, and you tell me what it is your challenges are, what your goals are, what it is you're trying to do, what you feel you need help on. I tell you who I am, what I do, and how I do it, and then we figure out whether or not I can do it for you, and then we take it from there, okay? All of my coaching sessions and programs are tailor-made. So even if you have the same issue as someone else, your program is going to be different from them because every single person is different, right? So I get to know my clients on a personal level and tailor my programs after their specific needs, okay? And by the way, I live in Stockholm, Sweden, and been living here for a while. So I also do coaching in Swedish and in English, just so you know. So for those of you who are Swedish, who are listening to this, who see this webinar or watch this webinar, I do coach in Swedish as well. All right. So until next week, you guys take care of yourselves. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of this weekend and this weather. See you next week.